Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royce. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. Technology is moving at an accelerating rate, and we are living with the increasing amount of technology in the home. Homeowners are focusing and incorporating sustainability in their design to minimize their carbon footprints. Catherine Drewbridge is here to discuss sustainability in design and tireless design that can last for decades. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Daphne.
Please tell us about you and what you do.
Thank you for having me. I am a designer. I work with an architect, Eric Beckstrom of Beckstrom Architecture, and we've been working together for about 7 years. And we are very busy. There are a lot of people doing projects, home projects in the Bay Area, and we are fortunate to be able to have so many nice clients. I focus primarily on the interiors, and Eric does CAD and does the structural, and he's brilliant at doing, setting and proportions and floor plans, and I help with a little bit of that, but I really come in when it comes to the interior elevations and designing what the interiors will look like fireplace walls and cabinetry and finished materials like countertops and tile and plumbing fixtures and lighting fixtures and wood flooring and all of that. So we work from the very beginning of the project, take clients through permitting and contractor selection and construction management, and all the way through as far as the client wants to go in terms of interior design with furnishings and paint and everything to get them into their new space.
Sounds great. I understand that one aspect of sustainability is to use only renewable energy. What kind of challenges do you face in such a design?
Yes, so sustainability is very important to Eric and me, and we're concerned about the impact that we have on the planet. It's a resource intensive field that we're in, and so we try to minimize that impact as much as we possibly can. There are 5 main areas that we look at when designing a home with the idea of reducing the impact on the planet. And the first one is size and function of a home. We tend to be sort of the mindset in our society that bigger is better. And people think that if they have the resources and the finances and the lot and the city approval, that they should build as big as possible. And in some cases that is a good idea. In other cases, it really can be very wasteful to build a big, huge home. So we really try to get clients to think about their spaces and exactly what they need versus what they can do. So size has a huge impact on energy use. The bigger the home, the more energy it takes, the more materials it takes, et cetera. The second area is the design itself and the material selection itself. We try to stay away from trends as much as we can and create spaces that use materials that are timeless, that clients will be happy living with for a long period of time and not feeling like they need to rip things out in 5 years or 10 years, but things that they'll be happy with for a long time. And even if they are to resell their home, something neutral enough that the next buyer might be happy with it as well. So neutral, timeless, solid, good quality materials. We like to think of the cost per use versus the cost overall. So sometimes a more expensive selection might be the best selection just because it'll last the test of time. The third area is energy efficiency, which is insulation and HVAC and those types of things, using quality windows and doors that provide good insulation, the orientation of the house in terms of where the sun sets and rises and sets and how that impacts the heat and coolness of a home. So Eric's really much more of an expert in those areas than I am, but it's a really important area that we focus on. The fourth area is water use. So that tends to be more in the landscaping area where, you can really have an impact on how much or little water that you use. So we try to, weigh in on that decision as well. California has so many codes regarding plumbing and fixtures that are allowed that, everything, we always have to use low flow faucets and toilets and things like that. So that's already built in to the process. And then the last area is just the material selection itself. And we're trying to focus as much as we can on choosing materials that are, again, timeless, high quality, but also locally sourced. There is a difference between purchasing tile that is made in North America versus Europe or even further abroad. Wood flooring is the same. So there are a lot of things that we can do to reduce freight across oceans by choosing materials that are made here. Toxicity level is another thing, although California has so many codes, they do a lot of that work for us in terms of the different chemicals that are off-gassing off of materials. And then, using reclaimed materials when we can, sometimes that makes sense. So it's great to look at that. That tends to be more in the final stages of the project and choosing furniture and cabinetry and wall finishes and things.
You just mentioned that about reclaim the materials. Would you recommend people to reuse and recycle building materials from salvage yards?
Yes, where it makes sense. That we love doing that, partly because of the aesthetic of bringing that old, piece into a home provides a lot of personality and soul. So we always like to try to incorporate some old things for aesthetics and style, but it also is great to be able to reuse things. And that also comes into play when we're demoing a project. We like to find homes for old windows and doors, wood where possible, flooring, plumbing and lighting fixtures can be reused. So we like to find homes for as many of the things being taken out as we possibly can. And instead of it all just going into the landfill.
And what is a timeless design?
Timeless design, the way I like to think about it is when you think about something that was in a house, say back in the 1920s, if we use materials that might have been used 100 years ago, they're probably timeless, like, beautiful marbles and beautiful limestone and simple tiles, cabinetry that's not trendy, that, looks like it could be out of an English kitchen from 100 years ago. That type of thing, natural materials. So I like to think of it that way. And that's not to say that I don't like modern materials as well. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to use a porcelain tile that looks like limestone instead of real limestone. It can be more cost effective. It can be easier to install, easier to clean. So anyway, but sometimes they can still appear to be real stone. So it has that look, even if it's not actual stone. So that's sort of how I like to think about it. If it's a trend that we've only been seeing in the last 5 to 10 years and never before then I tend to think that this is a style that may go out of style. So it's hard, it's tricky because, it's fun to look at the trends and it's enticing to follow the trends, but there are classic things that will never go out of style. It's the same with fashion. You think about the styles, that are lasting and timeless. They always look good. They never go out.
Probably something neutral, less pattern, I would assume.
Yeah, neutral and solid, less pattern, natural materials. Yes, those are definitely elements of it.
Tell us what items you have incorporated in your last design projects.
Well, I definitely have some favorite materials that I like to use, and some favorite paint colors and color schemes. And there's one granite in particular that I think is kind of a sleeper, that is a dark, monochromatic granite that I think is just it provides a great grounding in a kitchen, especially if you have lighter color cabinets. It's a workhorse. It's inexpensive. It holds up really, really well. And I love to incorporate that in a lot of my kitchens that I do. And then, so often that ends up on the perimeter countertops. And then we like to pick out something that really speaks to the client that might go on the island, for more of a pop of, pattern or color or something that they might be interested in. Um, so that's countertops. On tile's a challenging one because it truly is eye candy walking into a tile store. There are so many beautiful colors and textures and patterns, and it can be really tempting to just get sucked into all of the possibilities that you can do in a bathroom or a kitchen backsplash with tile. But again, I tend to, look away from those things unless a client is just absolutely passionate about doing a beautiful marble mosaic somewhere. We might choose one spot in a bathroom or a kitchen where there's a focal point that we can use something really special like that. But I tend to go with the timeless neutrals in both those spaces as much as I can.
And let's talk about building materials that can be timeless.
Okay. Again, the wood flooring never goes out of style. There are so many options now in the engineered wood flooring. And we use a lot of engineered wood flooring where it's basically a substrate of plywood, which makes it more stable than planks of real wood. So most contractors prefer using that. And it is, it's fewer trees that have to be cut down, and using the engineered wood products. We use a lot of those. There are thousands of choices in terms of textures and colors and wood species and stain colors and things and plank sizes and whatnot. And again, there are some of them that can look trendy. So we try to choose, some that, have that good balance between being of looking modern and fresh, but not being too trendy. So yeah, and then another feature that we love to use is wood wall treatments, like something that you might see in a craftsman home or a Victorian home from the 20s, wall paneling, painted wall paneling, and beautiful moldings around windows and doors. That can really add a lot of personality and timelessness to a new home. Windows and doors, yeah, we tend to have one manufacturer that is our go-to manufacturer, and we tend to do a lot of casement windows with sort of we vary the mullions and in terms of the pane patterns depending on the style of the house, whether it's modern or more traditional. So that really we always choose high quality windows. I'll just name drop the name of the company that we like to use, which is Marvin, and they have pretty much a window for every budget category, and all of them are highly efficient and insulated really well. So we kind of tend to just choose whatever fits in the budget, and then it's a whole aesthetic thing, looking at the windows from the inside of rooms and the outside to make sure it's all cohesive.
I have a marble windows in my home, and I do have a casement windows. I think my favorite is a double hung. It doesn't stick out too much when it opens, just to make more sense to me.
Yeah, double hungs are great. We love those too. They have, some people don't want the aesthetic of having that bigger bar of trim right in the middle. So if they want more view outside, the casements can work a little bit better if you want to maximize the views.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to earlier you mentioned about countertop. You like a particular dark color. Is there any reason other than matching the cabinets? And is it easier to taking care of the dark color versus to the lighter color?
Yeah, I like both. I usually mix both in most of our projects, unless, I go by what the client wants. Um, my personal preference is just to use dark somewhere in the kitchen just to have that contrast. I love to have contrast in spaces and have darks and lights, and the dark countertop on some of the countertops is one way to do that. But I love, there's so many beautiful light marbles and quartzites out there. There's hundreds of choices that I love. Um, so no, it's not just the darks that I like. That's just one way of adding some contrast.
Can you talk about the pros and cons of use 100% electricity at home?
Yes. So we are building a home in Los Gatos, and they and several other cities in the Bay Area are now requiring new construction to be all electric. And that was a surprise, right? It happened, the new code went into place right before we purchased this property. And so it was a bit of a challenge because we'd never built an all electric home before. So, um, but we're excited about it. The areas where it really has an impact are the HVAC system, which, so instead of a traditional furnace and forced air heat, we're using heat pumps, which also is used for air conditioning as well. So we're learning how to style those into the spaces, which is a challenge because the units themselves aren't all that attractive, but you can recess them into cabinetry and into the ceiling spaces between rafters and things. So that was a big part of the design process we had to look at. The second area is cooking. We can't have a gas range, so it's induction. And I'm actually really excited to use induction heat. I haven't tried it yet, but all the reviews that I've read are that induction cooking is the wave of the future, and there are many professional chefs that prefer it. And it's really easy to clean, and it looks clean and nice. So I know that's not going to be for everybody. So many people are so attached to their gas cooktops. It's going to be a tough transition for some, but personally, I'm excited about it. The one that I'm actually, probably is the hardest transition for me is is a fireplace. I love a fireplace, and we usually do gas fireplaces in all of our projects, and they're tied into the thermostat, and you can just have it produce part of the heat in your home, which is really wonderful. So we won't be able to do a gas fireplace. The electric fireplaces, in my opinion, aren't quite there yet in terms of looking realistic and attractive enough for us to use. I'm hoping that they will get better, or maybe some other technologies will emerge that are interesting to look at. The one thing we are going to do is do a propane gas fire pit in our backyard. So that'll give us that warm, cozy gathering place when we entertain outside to gather around. But anyway, the all electric is really interesting. And we have another home in Los Gatos we're also designing from scratch that will also be all electric. And we're going to see more and more of that for sure.
Question for you. Do they have an electric outdoor barbecue grill?
Gosh, that's a good question. I don't know about that. I haven't even looked into it or been asked about that yet.
Okay. And go back the new features you have. You probably have a heat pump hot water heater as well.
Yes. Yep. We
Okay.
haven't selected that yet, but yes, we will be having that. We also are talking to solar panel installer and getting ready to get solar panels installed, and looking at the battery backup. The new act that was just passed will provide a lot of tax rebates for heat pumps and electric appliances and solar panels. So we're excited to take advantage of some of those things. We're just getting educated on what that will mean financially. So
For all the solar panels, is any way that they can build more attractive rather than be on top of a roof?
Well, I mean, there are, that's a whole technical issue that I'm not an expert on at all, but every panel has to have its own, electrical pieces and parts. And the more pieces and parts that you have, the more things that can go wrong and break. So I think the shingles provide, maybe a more attractive surface, but they haven't gotten the maintenance, um, I guess, down to where the maintenance is as low as it is on the larger panels. So I don't, I mean, most people I think are choosing to put them more in areas of their roof where you don't see them as much. But yeah, I mean, they are what they are.
How about power walls? Do you recommend people add power walls in their garage?
That's a cost issue. They're expensive and they don't pay for themselves very quickly. So, I mean, ideally, it's wonderful if you can afford to put them in, but not everybody can. So it's not practical for the mainstream quite yet.
Power wall versus a generator. Any feedback about that?
That's out of my area of expertise. I really don't have any comment on that.
Okay, all right. Do you have other new tech make house not just be efficient, maybe become a smart home?
So that's a good question too, and that's an interesting one. That's really a personal preference thing. We tend to lean more towards simple, basic electronics in our home. That's just our preference. We aren't super gadgety people that are really good at fixing things when they break. So our preference is to do more simple designs in terms of electronics. We we do have clients that are really into having lots of gadgets and fun technology in their homes, and they love taking care of it and they just love it. So that's great. There's so many options now. But we also know that things break, and so that's totally a personal preference. But yeah, I mean, like nobody puts in traditional doorbells anymore. Everybody loves the the Google doorbells so that you've got a little video camera outside. And so there are certain areas, and smart thermostats make a lot of sense. So there are places where we definitely recommend the high tech stuff, but yeah, we lean towards simple.
Since you are such a designer for interior, would you tell us about the color choice?
Yeah, so again, I tend to lean towards neutrals. It's been kind of trendy to do a lot of pale grays in recent years, and I have a lot of clients now that are saying anything but gray. I think there are a lot of people love gray, and there are a lot of people that are getting tired of it now. So that's kind of an interesting trend. Um, I I think gray is great. You can also warm it up with taupe, and um, I like to use a lot of white, a lot of warm whites. And I like to always have a pop of dark, whether it's black or dark gray or a deep blue or a deep dark green, and put pops of those everywhere. Sometimes it's fun to have a little moodier space. And again, that's a personal preference, but whether it be in a den or a powder room or, some area of the home that feels a little bit cozier and moodier. So, it really just depends on the clients. We have one client that it was a really cute young hipster couple, and they were all about bright colors, and they could not be swayed to go neutral on anything. So we did, kind of a not quite turquoise, but a muted turquoise tile in their bathrooms. And they did a really bright, like calypso blue paint color on their island. And they did some navies, and they did some crazy yellow wallpaper in their laundry room. So they were a lot of fun to work with, and they set the tone for what they wanted color wise. So we really try to give our clients what they want, what makes them happy, and what feels like their personality and their space, but also with the advice of, are you still going to like this in 5 years? Are you still going to like this in 10 years? And if you want color, I tend to recommend that the color goes into art and rugs and pillows and blankets and, things that are easily changed, bathroom rugs and towels and stuff like that. But this particular client just fell in love with some of these other materials and paint colors and wallpapers. And um, they're super happy with the end result. So, yeah.
Well, I have to share my favorite color that I had picked for one of the bathrooms. I had that bathroom for probably more than 20 years. I was painted metallic silver. And I
Mm.
can tell you how much I love that color. I still love the color after 20 years later.
Oh, that's great. I love it. That's really fun. I have another client that loves blingy things. And yeah, she loves metallic and glass tiles and things like that. So I love working with clients to determine their own personal style and trying to blend, doing things that they're going to be happy with over time, with adding their own personality into things. It's really fun.
Regarding the sustainability design, do you have any input on the certification?
Yeah, so there are a lot of certifications out there, LEED and Passive Home, and there's all kinds of different ones. And Eric, my partner, is a lot more knowledgeable in that area than I am. We had talked about doing one of those a variety of those certifications in the home that we're building. And Eric has done those in the past. He had many years in the Northeast building homes when he lived in New England, and it's a lot more important back there to build energy efficient homes because their weather's so extreme. So it really matters how much heat you use in a winter, and they use a lot of it there. So he always tries to design homes that are energy efficient, whether they're certified or not. So we decided rather than complicating our process with trying to add that layer on, we decided to just build it as efficiently as we can. And California codes require us to do a lot of that anyway. But we're adding extra insulation, and we got higher end windows that are required. And so we're doing some extra things. And after the fact, after it's built, we may, go back and see, does it qualify as a passive home or whatever. But to us, it wasn't all that important to get the certification up front. We chose to just focus on building it really well and worrying about that later.
Would you think that certifications of the green home would actually impact for the resale value?
I've asked a couple different realtors that question, and you might know better than me if clients care about that. The answer that I've gotten from a few realtors is not really. The average consumer, that's not at the top of their list typically. So that's the answer I've received so far.
Well, I would probably say the same, but I would think it's probably more important is their electricity bill.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if we, get around time to selling this home that we're building, we certainly are going to keep track of the energy bills and are hoping that they're low. Well, thank you for having me. I love talking about design. I love the whole process and building, and I love um, helping the environment where we can in this crazy industry. So it's really fun to talk about it, and I've really enjoyed talking to you about it. And I hope that, people might gather a few tidbits of information if they're going through the process themselves.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.